Welcome to Labcast, a podcast about the medical laboratory science profession, brought to you by MedLab Convo. To get notified once we drop an episode, you can do well to subscribe to all our social media platforms at MedLab Convo. For questions, feedbacks, and shoutouts, you can do well to send a mail to at medlabconvolabcast@gmail.com. Thank you for listening. A friend of mine has been given 3 different genotypes across different facilities: AA, AS, and SS. It's very strange, owing to the fact that these are very wide spectrums, especially with relation to genotype. I also once watched a podcast that featured an actress who is a sickle cell warrior, and she's married to her husband, or she married her husband believing that he's AA. As a matter of fact, this diagnosis even reflected on his birth certificate. So he lived his whole life thinking he was AA. This was their reality as they married and fell in love until they ended up giving birth to a sickle cell warrior, something that was something she did not anticipate. She never anticipated that she would give birth to a child who was a sickle cell warrior. And so they found out that the man was wrongly diagnosed and his genotype is AS. These and many more stories have been stories that we've heard of people who have been on the receiving end of misdiagnosis. And this is why we consider the issue of misdiagnosis and ethical challenges a worthy topic to discuss. So we gladly welcome every listener to this episode. Strap in, get your headphones or boom boxes, and get ready to be enthralled by the episode. My name is Naram Ihoma, and I have here with me the ever reliable Samuel Ghana. Samuel, say hi.
Hello, everyone. Hi.
Okay, and we also have a delectable guest in the house in the person of scientist Oluwaseyi Olabode.
Hi everyone. I hope we're doing well. Hi. Hi people.
All right, you're welcome, Ma. Well, scientist Oluwaseyi Olabode is a medical laboratory scientist currently working at the University of Medical Science Teaching Hospital in Ondo State. She is a public health enthusiast and she's interested in emergency preparedness and health policy. She is a good music lover. She loves people, and most importantly, she loves God. And of course, she loves the medical laboratory science profession. Also, currently, she's serving in the hospital chapter in the capacity of the Vice Chairman, Association of Medical Laboratory Scientists. Welcome, Ma. Welcome, Ma. Welcome, Ma.
Thank
It's
you. Thank
it's
you.
it's also it's awesome having you today to have this conversation with Ma. So let's assume let's assume that no one knows anything about misdiagnosis. Can we look at the very core, at the very essence, what is misdiagnosis?
All right, thank you. So anything that is miss is not good, right? So misdiagnosis. I think there's something I would always do when we are probably teaching students or something. We would tell them that look at the word, it's English, right? And that misdiagnosis, I would say, is something that can be divided into two. Miss, not missed now, miss and diagnosis. So when something is missed, something is an anomaly, it's not right, it's not correct. So I would say misdiagnosis is, given or a wrong identification or a wrong diagnosis that has been issued out. So it embodies an action where a wrong diagnosis is given to the patient. So I would just simply explain it that way. Thank you.
All right, Ma. Thank you so much for your response, Ma. I want to ask a personal question though, and I don't know. Have you received any wrong results before, or have you received a conflicting lab results before?
Absolutely. I have. I have. So I don't know if I should get into the story now. Well, briefly, let me just say the story. So when I was getting into the university, we are expected to run some tests so that they can check your um, health, just check your health status and details about you health wise. So I just realized, in fact, more than once, sorry, what am I saying? More than once, I just realized that I was called back and asked to come in. I was scared. Of course, anybody, especially if you have somebody in the health background, with the health background or something, everybody used to fear some particular kinds of diseases back then. So when they call you for something like that, you're probably scared of some things like that. So I got in and the woman saw my face. She was the lab scientist then. She was the HOD. She saw my face and she saw how bothered I was. So she said, don't worry, it's not a problem. She said they just wanted to check some things that is no problem at all. That they just want to verify. They just want to um, verify something. So they took my sample, and then she explained to me when she realized that I was going to study MLS, medical laboratory science, in school. So she educated me. She was like, "Oh, it's just my blood group they wanted to confirm." And she said, "What blood group was I?" I told her, I said I was O positive. So she told me that that was not correct. That after they had checked, I'm A positive, and it has been A positive since then. I've not changed to O positive, so something must have gone wrong from that result that was done back then. So I've been, and there are some other examples. Maybe few, maybe not too many, but of course, I've been not victim. I've been I've experienced misdiagnosis in one way.
This is serious. Oh. I understand that it must have taken a toll on you. But looking in hindsight, how has this negative result affected your perception about diagnostic testing as a medical laboratory scientist?
My dear, it's only highlight how important what we are doing is. It makes it it's so visible that it's so obvious that this is not something you play with. It's so important. It just highlights how crucial, how important, because misdiagnosis can be the start of a myriad of problems if any diagnosis is not handled right, it's not done correctly. There is a lot of problems that can come out of that. So it just shows how important what we're doing is. It shows that we need to be more meticulous, more detailed about, and we should know how important, even detailed, because if you don't know how important what you're doing is, then you would abuse it. You just be like, oh, what I'm just doing, I'm Shebi is just to, it's just to. But once you understand what you're doing, you understand how important you are in ensuring proper, accurate diagnosis, it would correct so many things. So it just highlights how important what we're doing, what I'm doing, what every one of us is doing as a team, a laboratory team, how important every step, every one, how important we are in the course of diagnosis.
Oh, thank you so so much, Ma. That was a very beautiful insight. So I'd like to know if you're to rank the your top three most common causes of misdiagnosis in the lab, what would it be for you?
Okay. So ranking, because I would just like to say, because many of these things are interrelated. There in ranking would mean that there is one that is more important. But I would just like to make that known that it's not saying this is more or this is less. So it's just ranking the three. I'm just ranking in no particular order. So I would say clerical error, which can involve human error, our documentation and all that. Then mechanical error, which still involves humans, right? So that's why I said many of these things are interconnected. They are not necessarily separate from another. It's just, all of these things, they all matter. Then environmentally, the environment you work in and all that. all of these. There are just three. Those three I would just say, which can involve, the equipment, the way the lab is, and some other things you get. So that's what I'm saying. They all still are connected, right? But I would say clerical error, right? The mechanical error, which would be on the machines, the equipment, and all that. And then environmental factors, those things are also, because in the case of clerical error, right, if one person might do something right, the person who is duplicating that result might, maybe out of being tired and some other factors, you know, can duplicate it wrongly. Sometimes when you write, I used to see some people that write E. They don't write their E well. You think they're right, or let's say six, and this number, you see a number, they look like another number, and then you don't write it well. In the duplication of results, misdiagnosis can happen. So you can see stuff like that. So those three, I would say I would rank them in that order.
All right, Ma. Thank you so much for that beautiful response. So, let's imagine a scenario. Patient goes to the lab to screen himself for HIV. I haven't done that. He found out that he was HIV positive, but it was a false positive result due to an error in testing. I want to imagine, or I want to know, what do you think the laboratory would do? And so I'm imagining in my head what could be done to salvage the situation at this point. Ma, what do you think?
Okay, so at what point exactly before the patient had received it, or
Well, the
while
patient
you're
has
still
received the result already now, has gone home.
has gone home? How long would we say this has happened for? Can we like put a time limit to it, or we don't know? Okay, the patient has shot gone. The patient has gone with it, right? The
Yes, the
patient
patient
has gone
gone
with
home
it.
with.
You see, medical issues are, as far as I know, they are issues that we try as much as possible to avoid, right? So the best solution in this case at any point in time is avoid it, right? And that's why all these quality measures should be put in place to ensure that we don't have that. So for HIV, right, it's not just, you don't just stop at determine once you have a positive, because it must have come at the first level. So if you have that, that is not only what is released. One has to follow the necessary protocols to ensure that this is not happening. This is true or this is false, which would all the Unigo, the stat pack, and all that. But in issues where this has been released, this is ethical. I don't know if I will be able to, but I can. Let me do my possible best based on informations that I have gathered from people that work in that place. Anything that would require ethical um, issue like this, if at the laboratory level it has not necessarily gone too far, it can be dicey because this person you're doing the test for, let's assume this person is an educated person. It can, if you try to even call this person back, he can decide that you're incompetent, and some people can be funny. It's not even being funny. This is something that is serious, right? Lawsuits can come in next, and then that's why I said at the beginning that it's best avoided. Misdiagnosis is not something to be played with at any level. So we're supposed to put every measure in place to ensure that it doesn't happen. But peradventure it happens, it will now depend. I think it will now depend on the individual, because I don't know if I've been given such, I'll put myself in the shoes. That's another thing. Empathy is also something that we need to have as people. If you were in the shoes of this person, would you like to have such results given to you? You would blow up. So, one has to be careful. I would keep reiterating on that. I'll keep saying that. But let's assume that has happened. You would have to involve a superior, a senior officer, let them know this issue is on ground, and they have to follow protocol. Hopefully, it doesn't get to the management level, because at the end of the day, if it blows out of proportion, it will have to get, and it becomes an ethical issue. it will have to get to the management, and the hospital will have their reputation to save. So it depends on the individual. Let's assume the individual is not educated. If it's somebody who would take um pleading, then you're lucky. If it's somebody you have to explain to and say, okay, it's just a test that we need to run again. Because normally, even if you have a positive result, right? Even negative results, yeah, you expect the patient to come back in 3 months because of the window period. So one, this is a very sensitive topic. It's a very sensitive topic. You have to get that person, and I don't know how you lay it to the person. That's why I said you involve a senior officer if you because you have a senior officer ahead of you if you're not, and let them know so that protocol can be you call the patient back, explain to the patient, but it can go any way. It can go south and it can go your way. So if it's a patient who would take explanations and apologizing and letting them know that this is after you've done the test, you require that this person needed to come back just to confirm and some things. And if you're lucky, that may not be an issue. But the best thing is to avoid this. The best way is to avoid this because we'll keep moving around circles and trying to.
May
But
God help.
may God help us. So the best thing not to get involved. Please, let's not get involved at all.
These things of errors, because we are humans, is almost inevitable. I mean, we can try, and the goal is not to even have any errors. So we're not going to test hoping to have errors. But then there's, like, when I was doing my internship, they will always tell us that the room for error is, it does not exist, like zero room for error. Because if you go into the lab have trying to have zero point 0.5 room for error, then you would have more than 0.5. So this question leads me to my next question, because one of the things that we're discussing side by side misdiagnosis is the ethical challenges that come up with it. Just like this previous question, if a scientist realizes a sample mix-up has led to an incorrect diagnosis, but the results have already been sent to the physician, what would be the best ethical response to this situation? Given the fact that they're always saying that the laboratory is at fault, the laboratory is at fault, both for the ones that are our fault and the ones that are not our fault. So what should be the best ethical response to this situation?
Okay, thank you. So, like I said, the best ethical response, and like you also said, is to avoid, right? But like you also said, errors are bound to, let's not say bound, errors can happen. Errors can happen due to so many factors, right? But the best way is just let it be as minimized. In fact, let it not exist at all. So, because this issue has always been discussed in our meetings sometimes. So, I'll give an instance um, where one of our directors gave us a story of a pastor who came and they have the same names. They don't bear the same name, but they have the same name. So let's say like Akin or Akin Ola, and another is Ola Akin. So these names are they are not they are the same, but they don't bear the same way. But like the way we write names sometimes here, we can write it anyhow. Ola can. In fact, I've seen a place where a patient had come before and the name I was trying to confirm. She said anyhow. I had to let her know, please, so not anyhow. Which one comes first? Which one is on your case file? Which one did you come with on your card? Because there's a possibility for three people to be bearing the same name. So let's not go far as three. Two. So you have Akinola, you have Olaaki. Now one is negative, one is positive. So in this case, this pastor was given the positive result. And getting to his family is a pastor. His home unit was affected, the church got to know. Bad news spread fast. And so this had gone far, right? And upon realizing that, he was even the one who went to other laboratories eventually, and he said when he came back with a stack of results that stated negative, and he came threatening lawsuits. I mean, in that case, there's nothing anyone would do, and the hospital management have their reputation to also save. And the scientist who was involved. But something that was important that she highlighted in that story was interpersonal relationship amongst hospital hospital teams, the doctors, the nurses, the laboratory scientists, and all other personnel, technicians, everyone. Because sometimes these are people who can save you. No one, the common enemy is not individuals in itself. It's the the already existing relationships that people talk about, already existing stories that people hear that are usually the problem, not necessarily in individuals. So I can come in and they tell me, avoid this person, not because I've necessarily had a one-on-one with that person, but I'm engaging with that person based on ESA, right? So it's a problem. So, but that aside, so when they had this situation, he came with his results and he said he was going to sue. And they tested him again and they realized it was negative. So it was a mix-up at the pre-analytical, which is the documentation stage. So, by the time he got to court, they had to settle out of court, according to her. So the best thing, because if he should continue, it's going to be a problem. People losing their license, the patients' distrust in our competency and all of that. So the best thing to do, the best ethical resolution in any case is avoid it. But let's assume that feedback and interpersonal relationships are encouraged. Somebody can notice these things because these doctors sometimes are the ones who get one-on-one with the patient. So one can get feedback and say, oh, I think based on this history, the history this patient presented, the details, I don't think this is it. And meanwhile, the one who was positive, this person is presenting this person is having these clinical presentations that points to this. He is able to communicate with the personnel and let them know. So when we are not having antagonistic relationship, people can give communication because we're not there for ourselves, we're there for the patient is our primary goal in healthcare in the hospital. So interpersonal relationship is also important, and the all the phases, this pre-analytical, because the pre-analytical, the post-analytical sometimes are not necessarily attended to. So once we attend to all of these things and ensure that they are rightly put in place, we'll avoid it. So I would say again, avoidance is still the best thing, because once it starts to get to being a lawyer being involved, we don't want it gets messy. I think we've heard of a story of something that happened in, I don't know which of the Lagos hospitals, where a result was issued and it was so messy. People had to, even up to the CND, they lost their license to practice. So nobody wants that. Nobody wants to get into such messy situations. So ensuring that the error is minimized as much as possible is very important. Then feedback, communication, and interpersonal relationship amongst members of the profession. It's also important because it can help us to address things before it gets out of hand. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much, ma. Thank you so much. This is really insightful. Okay, thank you so much, ma. This is really insightful. But ma, let's move on to laboratory staff. Let's move on to our colleagues. And um this is really seen most times in private practice. But there are things that I've noticed that sometimes people in private practice usually cut corners, especially in running quality controls. And other things could be hospitals or um quality manager, consumable manager not providing the things that are needed, and hence the person on the bench, in order to give results, begins to try to cut corners, cut procedures in order to be able to get the same results. And sometimes we know that these things can get messy, and it could actually lead to misdiagnosis. At least I know in some areas where for those people that use semi-auto, they are able to rearrange the reagents so that they would use half the reagents to get the same results. Well, of course, potential for misdiagnosis. How would you as a laboratory manager handle such situation?
So, Andu, what situation exactly? Is it of my own colleague being
Yes,
wrong,
ma.
right? Doing the wrong thing?
Yes, ma.
Now, you want to put Yoruba will say sheke sheke. How do I how do I translate this? You want to put chain in my leg? Anyway, this is an important discussion, right? And we're trying to learn to do the right thing because, like I said, it's not about ourselves. Whatever we do has implication on the patient. And, you know, like we always say about empathy, you don't want to be in that position. It's not an ideal situation. So if I have a colleague who is not doing the right thing, there are two things about this. Does he know he's not doing the right thing? We are assuming. I'm not saying we know we went to school, we are done, but some people have so gotten used to doing some things, not necessarily by themselves. They also watched people do the same, right? So it's not necessarily only because of how they've come. This is something they've seen happen. It's something that some people who are supposed to lay examples for them have done. So they see it as normal, you know. So that's something that it's not just that person. If you say that person should not do it, other people have also observed that and assume it's normal. So it's the first thing is to ensure that that's not a common practice, and I think that's why we have the evaluate. I think the M&E, the monitoring and evaluation in the arm of the council. Even the association, to ensure that everyone is practicing some things according to the uh, quality standard, what is normal, what is acceptable, what has been proven to be acceptable for all. Like in Lagos, we have the farmer. I worked in Lagos briefly, and I remember that they would always come to the lab. They don't tell you, they don't announce it. They just come and ensure that. So those are some of the measures that can put in place to check some of those things, to be sure that even you that you're coming in, you're not saying that's how they do it now. That's how my guy does it. So you do it. So that's one aspect. Another aspect is I know that this person knows it. This person knows what's right to do. I would correct the person that Abba, now this is not. Imagine saying are you. Sorry, permit my use of PJ. Imagine saying are you. If not, or your mama or somebody, you can come with that level so that it's not looking like you're attacking. But this is something that is important. That can cost an individual their lives. So you don't take any of those things for granted. I remember back then while I was working, I think in Lagos, one of my ogas taught me. He's late now. He's so rest in peace. He showed me a sample because I was doing something and he was trying to correct me. He said, you may not see this patient physically. He said, but every sample you're holding is a representation of a human. This is a human life you're holding. So we are not seeing the patient, but this is the patient. So whatever you do affects these patients directly. So that's why you don't take any of these things for granted. You correct the person. And if the person is not listening, there is always a superior to report to. We have an organogram, right? And I'm a principal scientist now, for instance. I have a chief, I have a head of unit. The head of unit also reports to the director. The director reports to the management. So everyone has somebody who is head over them, who they report to. Because if please permit me to use this, if Kasawa bursts, everybody is involved and they would throw who is basically they will throw you under the bus, which can even involve you that should have corrected this person. So you don't take any of these things slightly. You ensure that everything is done in the proper way. You report if this person would not, because it's not every time you'll be there to say, okay, let me pick up this person's slack, let me try to do what he's not doing. Days when you're not there, this person will still do the same. But once somebody is made an example, right, others would follow the right. I know it's not as easy as we say it, but Those are protocols that are being laid down. If you follow them, once one person is being made an example of, everybody would cooperate and do the right thing. Yeah, thank you.
All right. Thank you so much for that lovely response. Then my next question would be that, do you think laboratories should be legally required to disclose internal errors to patients, even if no harm occurred? What do you think about that?
Disclosure sometimes, you may think it may not be harmful. At the end of the day, it becomes harmful because once you let the patient know that there was an error, you've already created a bridge. The patient cannot trust what you're going to give the person because anybody you tell, sorry, there was a mistake in labeling, it begins to create doubt. It begins to make the patient to doubt our competency and wonder, do these people know what they are doing? So already that in itself is harm to the patient.
You don't think you're having integrity by telling the patient?
Integrity would be you following protocol. There is usually a protocol that is in place. There's a protocol in place for dissemination of information. You might, for you might, in your, even in your dissemination of that information, it might not come out to be harmful, right? But it's not about how you say it, it's about the reception of that information. So if the patient does not, if you in your mind you've cooked up the response, you've cooked up the excuse, it is perfect in your head, when it comes out, it may not necessarily be what the patient, patient may not see it in that light. Patient might take it to be, you don't know what you're doing. So in itself can be harmful. So I think it's important that if there is an internal error, everyone in that lab and everyone who is involved in the protocol on how the information is disseminated, right, would be involved, and everybody would be able to talk on the best, the best way possible to let that patient know without causing harm. Because I don't know, I'm trying to see an example of something that happened before. This is not necessarily in the facility that I work, but let me give a scenario. A patient brings a sample, for instance, in um, a bottle, a different bottle. Then maybe somebody decides that let's put it in another bottle, Abby. Or there was a mix up somewhere, and this sample was run and they realized that there's an error. You now call the patient and say, sorry, this error is an error from your end. I don't think the patient needs to know. It's an internal error. It's an error that you can do your best to ensure that you correct if it's still within the purview of correction, you can still correct it at that point. By the time you start to tell the patient all that information, that patient is going to lose his or her confidence in you. Doesn't trust. It cannot. May not even trust that result. By the time you get results, they will say, ah, she said they said that there was an. They said that result getting to the doctor. You can't trust that too. So in a way, it begins to affect the patient's course of treatment and all of that, because our what we do is to provide the physician with a trusted diagnosis to confirm what their proposed or provisional diagnosis is. So the moment where everybody is beginning to know some things that probably can be corrected, and the patient is knowing, patients, they can be very funny. You tell a patient something here, it goes to the patient to say something else. Oh, okay, this is a nice example. I was with an intern one time, and we were just discussing on something else, which is something else that can be something else that one has to watch. It's not everything you just speak about, confidentiality and all that. But it wasn't even confidentiality breach, right? We're just discussing normally, and this patient got that information and assumed that we did the same with our own result, and went and told the doctor a different thing. And thankfully, this doctor is our person, like we said, interpersonal relationship. And the person came and said, so thing happened, so time. And we're all lost because we could not remember doing something like that. We could not remember that kind of issue happening with a patient. So it was news to us. But as we're discussing and trying to put two and two together, the person came back and we realized that, oh, this is the person. And that those are some of the things. So imagine that an error happened and you tell that kind of patient. I mean, the person, way the person will present it, many things can happen with that. So one, I don't think that giving patients a picture of internal error, unless it has gotten to, let's say, for instance, the old results, false positive results being given out, and it has exploded, like the case of the pastor. And that one you have to, there's protocol. The CMD had to be involved. Everyone who PRO had to be involved. PRO of the hospital had to be involved. The lawyers. So everybody knows how this information would be put to the patient.
Thank you so much, Ma. This is really insightful. Honestly, it's really insightful. So, Ma, moving on, we have automation now, and with automation, a lot of challenges come into play. I think I remember a situation where I think the machine failed QC. Yes, the machine failed QC, and we could not run samples that day. We had to revert to manual. Now, I am thinking maybe I'm playing the devil's advocate in this place, and I am trying to just imagine a situation where this increased automation is in the laboratory practice. Has Is it increasing the chances of misdiagnosis? Now, I'm sure that this would be analytical misdiagnosis. Now, is it increasing the chances or is reducing the chances? What other challenges can be attributed to the role of automation as regards misdiagnosis, ma?
Okay, so you're saying that how does automation come in play in misdiagnosis? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, ma.
Okay. So, like, I don't know if I mentioned that, what we try to do to reduce misdiagnosis, for accuracy and precision, if you remember, is our quality assurance, or quality assurance in the laboratory, where the pre-analytical, the analytical, and the post-analytical phase is important. So it doesn't, I don't think it really matters automation or manual. This faces, if these measures are not taken, because it still applies to automation, all of them. If a sample is probably mislabeled from the start, your automation does not correct that. The automation receives what is being sent to it, right? So the sample is for B, but it was labeled with A. The except for in cases where where they use barcode, but even with the barcode there's mislabeling, right? So that means the barcode would probably be different. The sample in that bottle is different. Automation is machine learning, is all of that. What do I say? The artificial intelligence, right? So it only takes what is given. So it follows what it has been imputed. And so if B is the sample in A, or how did I say it the other time? Sorry. The sample in the A bottle is for B. It will record the blood sample that was taken into it, but you would record it as and report it as A. So already there is already error there. So the error didn't necessarily come from the automation. It came from an error due to a pre-analytical error. So that's why I think that whether it's manual or it's automation, the challenges still are same, because I think what automation does for us is, it helps to improve turnaround time. In a way, it kind of helps to, it can detect some, some, it can flag some things, and that comes from feedback, maybe in mechanical, the feedback mechanism that is in place in that machine. But I don't think that if an error like that had happened in pre-analytical, the machine can do much in addressing such. So I think the challenge is, I don't know which I can say is more or less. But let's say, for instance, now, for instance, what, like I said, automation helps to reduce, the burden of what you would do. Automation can do like 500 samples in 1 hour. Meanwhile, in manual, um, you have to do let's say maybe less than that, much less than that. But let's assume that there was an error during collection from sample 10 out of 500. This is an example that one of our directors gave me a picture to at a point in time. Let's assume that because they would always, you know, make us understand that quality assurance is not just in this lab, anywhere is important because any error can, create chaos, can cause problems. So let's assume that at sample 10, there was an there was an error, pre-analytical error. That means you can't be certain what happens from 10 to 500. So you would have to probably run those samples again from 10 to 500. Number one, the time you didn't want to waste, you're wasting it again. Resources, you're wasting them because you cannot take the chance and say, let me just remove 10. I think it's just 10. You don't think, you have to be sure. So, in a way, the challenges are still, they're still, I would say, they're still a bit similar. They're still about the same with if it's being done manually. So it's those measures that are in place that they need to the pre-analytical quality measures, the analytical, all the measures put in place at every phase. Those are the things that I believe would reduce error, would not minimize error or not allow error to even exist at all. My experience, I don't think so because there are other factors that can allow for misdiagnosis.
All right. Thank you so much, Scientist Shay. You've really, really poured out your heart into this episode. Yeah, so we would be going into our this or that segment. This is a very fast segment, and we would love to know which you prefer. So, bacteriology or virology?
Anything microbiology, I don't prefer. However, oh my, that's tough. Oh. Why just those in microbiology though? Why not something else? I really didn't
Also,
like
I'm not
microbiology. Ah, it's plenty. Microbiology was interesting, the names, but I mean, it was so broad and is a very important part of all aspects are important anyway. So I don't know. No, I don't have a preference. So none of that. That's my answer.
I said manual or automated method in hematology.
Hmm. Ah, my sister. Automated, oh, right? But we don't bench our manual method to but who doesn't like less stress in their life? Well, automated.
Sound like all these old scientists that don't want automation to come into play. Okay.
Oh,
For
I do.
let's
I
say
said automated, oh. I said automated, oh. I said automated, oh. I don't like stress. I mean, just put on. But it also requires work too, because at some point you have to realize, oh, if something is happening, if you don't think something is right. So there's still the brain work too. So in a way, you're not necessarily out of it entirely, but it reduces your work by a lot.
yes. Also for lab music, when you want to chill in the lab, headphones or speakers.
Both, oh, some days you
Yeah.
just want to, maybe while you're sectioning or you're just doing something, you want to just, but sometimes you want the energy to, you want all these sad bones to go out. So speakers. So it depends on the mood, depends on what's happening.
Lab coats or scrubs.
Scrubs. I have some really beautiful scrubs, and I love scrubs. Scrubs are beautiful, but my director where I work, she would say when you are working, you wear your scrub and your lab coat.
For lab breaks, do you like short breaks or you like long breaks? Short, intermittent breaks or long breaks?
Long go, long break. That's why when
Okay,
it's time to go,
lastly, would you prefer week duties to be on call during the week or weekend calls?
calls during the week.
Yes, or weekend calls.
Hmm. Ah. Hmm. Hmm. Well. Weekend call. No, 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 no. My weekend. No, nothing messes with my weekend. Sorry. I think I'll prefer week
Okay.
week calls. But I would pray that the workload is not it's not killing.
Uh,
Ma, I'm going to be honest with you. I don't like any call, honestly. I
Neither
had, I
do
had,
I.
I had terrible experiences with call, especially in microbiology department.
How about
I
this too?
No, nah, histopathology is chillings now. Netflix and chill.
So I'm in the histopathology unit. So in a way, the calls are not a bit non-existent right now. So, but if I were to be in that shoe, none of the above. But if I have to choose, I think weak calls are they are a thing that can work.
All right, ma. This honestly has been an eye opener for all of us. This conversation is an awesome conversation. Thank you, ma, for sharing your wealth of knowledge. Thank you for taking the time to come sit with us and have this little conversation. And we hope that our listeners have gained insightful knowledge on misdiagnosis and, more importantly, how we can curb this. Ma has consistently said that it should be avoided. And so, thank you so much, Ma. Thank you once again. Please do well to connect with us on all social media platforms at MedLab Convo. And if you want to send us a mail, you can send us a mail at medlabconvolabcast@gmail.com. Finally, see you in the next episode. Bye.